Hello everybody, my name is Brian Adcock. I'm your race director and the founder of Castle Triathlon Series. So this video is intended for those of you that are aged between 11 and 16 and are racing on Sunday the 27th of September. If you're watching this and you're not between those age groups and you're not in this particular race distance, then stop watching now because this will make no sense to you and is not relevant to you. Okay, so those of you that are racing, welcome to Hever Castle and the 12th running of the Hever Castle Triathlon. Fantastic to have you signed up and coming to do our wonderful event. Obviously this year things are a bit different because of COVID-19 and you'll have already no doubt all gone back to school and know that things are a little bit different than perhaps when you last went to school. So in the same way, those of you that have been to the triathlon before, there will be one or two things that are a bit different. So our guiding principles to make things super safe for everybody are the following 5 things. First of all, athlete education and communication. And this video is part and parcel of that, but there will be a load of other information that's sent out and it's really important that you and your parents read this stuff before you turn up at the event. Secondly, athlete reduction in terms of numbers, so density reduction. We're making sure that we have a smaller field this year so that there is more room for everybody and everybody is spread out a little bit more. And one of the main things is that you'll be entering the water one by one about 10 seconds apart rather than starting in a big wave. So I know some of you will prefer that, others won't, but that's just the way it's going to be this year. Touch point reduction is our third guiding principle, and basically we don't want you to touch anything on the event that you don't have to, so just try and keep your own kit close to yourself. Don't share anything with anybody and don't touch anything unless you need to. Fourthly, we are requiring athletes to be more self-reliant this year. So an obvious example of this is that quite often we're very generous in terms of cycle support. So if somebody turns up with a slightly ropey bike, we'll be able to fix it and mend it and oil it and do everything else to it before that particular person starts racing. This year, we're not allowed to do that. So please make sure that if your bike needs a service, you've taken it down to your local bike shop before you turn up to the event. And there'll be other areas of self-reliance as well, things like your helmet. Make sure your helmet fits properly before you turn up at the event, because again, we can't touch it. It will take us a long time to explain to you how to do all the straps and everything else. So bear that in mind. And the fifth and final thing is, and you'll see this in your schools, increased hygiene. So we will have lots of hand sanitizers in and around the event village. There is going to be extra cleaning of everything on event, and there'll be more hand wash stations than you've seen before. So those are the 5 principles. And now I'm going to talk to you about the actual race, which is far more important. So I'm just going to share my screen with you. So bear with me and my technology. And let's have a look at the map. Okay, so this is Hever Castle over here. This is the lake. And in terms of the other video, this is where you'll have parked your car down here. This is the holding area. You'll have walked in down here, come through registration, parked your bike up in transition, and then worked your way down to the holding areas. And then I pick up the narrative for you when you get down to the loggia here. So your race will start when you cross a mat, which is at the top of these steps on the left-hand side of the loggia over here. The steps below the mat are super slippy, and I want you just to take your time as you get into the water. There'll be some of you that are quite leisurely, others will want to get a move on, and it's those second group of people that I just want to make sure are careful as they're getting into the water. You can't dive in because it's not very deep, and as soon as you get into the water, don't worry about that green bit there because that's not going to be in the water, but you'll see in front of you 5 swimming buoys. Those of you that are in the 15 to 16-year-old group, you swim down to the 250-meter marker, which is this end buoy down here. So you'll pass the 50, the 100, the 150, the 200, and then you round the 250 buoy, keeping that on your right shoulder, and then you swim back in this direction down to an archway that will be at the boat ramp exit. Now, in previous years, we've had a guy called Simon here who pulls you out of the water. This year, again, to reduce touch points, we're just going to have some scaffold handrails that you'll be able to grab hold of to help haul yourself up at the boat ramp that gets you out of the water. As soon as you get out of the water at this point here, you turn immediately left, run along the gravel, and then make your way back up through the woods to transition. And I'll talk about transition in a second. So that's the swim for the 15 to 16-year-olds. Guys who are 13 to 14, you're swimming 400 meters. You swim out to the fourth buoy, so past the 50, past the 100, past the 150, round the 200, keeping it on your right shoulder. And then you swim direct towards the archway that's by the boat ramp. And again, exit the water using the handrails, turn immediately left, and then work your way up to transition. And then finally, you guys who are in the 11 to 12-year-old age group, you are swimming 300 meters. You swim out to the third buoy, so past the 50, past the 100, and then when you get to the 150, turn right around it, keeping it on your right shoulder, and then make your way out to the archway that's by the boat ramp. Grab the handrail and turn immediately left once you're on dry land and make your way up to transition. And that's your swim. So swim safety out in the water. Those of you that have raced with us before will know that we ask you to roll over onto your back and put your hand up in the air. And then if nobody seems to be paying any attention, add a shout of help as well. And one of my canoeists will be over there in a flash to help you out of the predicament that you might be in. And so that's your swim. Okay, I'm going to change maps now. So again, bear with me while I just get rid of that one and put transition back up on the screen. So T1, which is the first time you go into transition. So if you remember from the other map, you follow that blue arrow that brings you up from the swim. And this is the point where you come back into transition through this corner here. We're then going to ask you to run all the way down to the far end of transition and turn right at the bottom there. And then you'll have a series of letters or numbers. We're not quite sure yet how we're going to do this, but they will tell you which row of racking that you are opposite. And you'll remember from when you did your little transition recce earlier, which row you're in and where your bike is, and then you'll run, still in your swimming kit, back to your bike. Let's say it's on this row here. As soon as you get opposite your bike in transition, you can then get out of your swim gear and make sure that you remember to put your helmet on before you grab your bike off your racking. And then you run with your bike. You don't get on your bike in transition, but you run with it down to the end of the racks, turn immediately left, all the way down here, and then all the way down to this corner to where bike out is. Okay. And then you'll still run with your bike for a considerable distance. This is probably about 80 yards all the way along here. So lots of running with bikes until you get to the mount point. And when you get to the mount point, which is just in line with the scaffold pedestrian bridge down in this bottom left-hand corner, that's when you can get on your bike and start pedaling. And away you go around your course. So in terms of the actual course itself, we'll go back onto the other map. And let me just get that on full screen. Okay, so here's transition. You exited in this corner. You actually jump on your bike just about here where the scaffold bridge is. And then, depending on your age group, you're either doing 1 or 2 laps of the cycle route. The older kids, so those of you that are 15 to 16 and 13 to 14, will be doing 2 laps of the cycle. You guys will be following black arrows on a yellow background, and I'll show you those arrows when we're down on the loggia before your swim start, just to remind you what colours they are. And you're basically doing 2 circuits of a 4.2 kilometre course. Those of you that are in the 11 to 12 years age group will just do 1 lap of this 4.2 kilometres course. Okay, so the cycle course itself, you cycle along in this direction until you get to the bottom of a small lane here, and then you'll be turned left. This is uphill. As you can see, we've got oodles of marshals this year, so there'll be absolutely no problems with your direction finding. When you get to the top of the hill, you'll be crossed over onto some grass, and you whiz along a grassy track until you get to the end of Parkwood at this location here. You'll be turned left then, and you go onto a road planings track, so not a tarmac road, but almost as good as, and you'll hurtle downhill. Just be careful on this section. We've had 1 or 2 people come off over the years. Make sure you stay on the actual track itself. Don't try and cycle on the grass either side, because it is uneven ground. And when you get to the bottom of the hill, you'll be turned right, and you're effectively doing a full circuit of the lake. You'll pass a water point down in this corner here, where you'll be able to grab cups of water from a table. They won't be handed to you, but they'll be pre-prepared by the water point team. so you will have to come to a full stop to grab a cup of water if you need one. And then from there, you whiz down a long straight for about 1 kilometre, going over an island called 16-acre Island. You go round the water maze at that point, over a second bridge just there, and then you make your way around the formal grounds of the castle, behind the squash courts, behind the castle itself, up past the Moat restaurant. And then eventually you'll come to a steep little hill that's just underneath the quay here, which has got gravel on it. And then you'll be basically almost in the home straight of your cycle. This is gently downhill on a bit of grass. And then when you get to the ticket huts at this location here, you'll be turned right. And those of you that are doing a second lap will continue straight on down this tarmac road and then pick up the bottom of the lane again and then carry on around for your second lap. Those of you that are doing your first lap, and also those of you that are completing your second lap, will be turned left at this point here, at the bottom left-hand corner of the car park and Pokeridge Field, and sent back towards transition and the scaffold bridge. When you get to the scaffold bridge, you dismount your bike and then you'll be heading back into transition. And that's pretty much it for your cycle. So just to go back to the transition map, which is this one here. You will come back in, this is the scaffold bridge, dismount point, you'll run with your bike back down here, run with your bike, and then you come back into this far corner again. And then you pick up your bike rack, the one that we talked about earlier, which was this one, re-rack your bike at your correct point. When you get there and you've racked your bike, then you can take your helmet off, put your running gear on, and then you head off in this direction to the end of the racks, down here into the corner, and then run out is in exactly the same corner as bike out was. And indeed, the first bit of your run is the same as, in the same direction as your bike was earlier along here. So that's T2. So going back onto the main map again. So different courses for different age groups on this one. First of all, let's deal with the blue coloured route, which is 2.5 kilometres, and that is the route for both the for the 13 to 14s and the 15 to 16s. So it's a little bit longer, but it is a beautiful running route. So this is you coming out of transition just here in this corner, and then you run down to the bottom of the lane that we talked about earlier, and then you'll be directed up through the woods, up to the top of Park Wood, and then you'll handrail the edge of Park Wood all the way into the corner, exactly the same as you cycled previously, but just off to the left-hand side of the cycle pathway. And then you'll work your way all the way down to this bottom corner and back to the lake. Whereas before on your bike you turn right, this time you'll be turned left, and you come back along Lakeview Walk, which takes you all the way back to the point that you ran up to transition. And there you'll run up the hill and you join the finishing straight, and then you'll see a line or a sign that says finish, and that will take you to the finish area that's over here. So for both 13 to 14s and 15 to 16s, that's your running route. You'll be following arrows that are pink, and they'll say run route on them. But again, plenty of marshals out on the course, and they will be able to identify you because of the colour of the number that you're wearing. So please make sure that you wear your number on the front of your running top, whatever you may be wearing. Those of you that are doing the 11 to 12s route, then exactly the same as the older kids, except you guys, when you come out of transition, you follow up the hill, exactly the same as before, all the way into this corner. But then when you get halfway down the wood, you're going to be turned left on a bridle track, which gives you a shorter run of around about 1.8 kilometres, and you pick up the same route and the same finish as they did before. So just remember, as you come out into the finishing straight here, you're looking for the sign that says finish, and all of you are just doing one lap. Again, your signage will be pink run route signs, and I will make sure that I hold those up before you actually throw yourselves into the water at the start of the race, so you know what you're looking for. And I will also remind you about the number of laps that you're doing. So I think that's pretty much it. If you've got any questions at all about distances or what you're doing, then please send us an email on admin@castletriathlonseries.co.uk, or call the office, and we'd be delighted to answer any questions that you have. Otherwise, have a great race, and just be COVID aware when you're on site, because the eyes of the triathlon world will be upon us. Thank you for listening.